Hello, hello, and welcome to the weekly energy update for the week of August 23rd, 2026. I'm Renee Spears, a spirit guide channeler and spiritual mentor, and I'm coming to you from beautiful Bozeman, Montana. Every Sunday, I share the energy for the week ahead, and I also infuse the show with some positive vibes, so you get a little positive energy boost just for listening. And this week, on Thursday night, we have a lunar eclipse. It peaks around 9:15 p.m. Pacific, 12:15 a.m. Eastern, and we'll actually be able to see it here in the U.S. It's not quite a total lunar eclipse, but it's really close. About 96% of the moon will be eclipsed. And this lunar eclipse also closes the eclipse portal. But that doesn't mean the energy suddenly disappears. This eclipse is the culmination of everything that's been building. And then we start integrating all the changes we've gone through for a couple more weeks. And we know that a lunar eclipse happens with a full moon. So this is basically a supercharged full moon. And because it's taking place in Pisces, there's going to be a lot of emotion with it. Lunar eclipses also have a much longer effect on our lives than a regular full moon. So the influence of a full moon, usually lasts for about 2 weeks. For a lunar eclipse, it's about 6 months. And both of them reset your emotions, but a lunar eclipse clears away nearly 6 months of emotional baggage. So our souls are getting a deep cleanse. And this eclipse season has been a doozy. I've heard from almost every client that they're exhausted, they're having headaches, feeling drained, or just maybe foggy thinking, unable to concentrate. So if you've been feeling that way, you're definitely not alone. And as we get closer to this eclipse on Thursday night, we can expect this energy and our emotions to be heightened even more. Lunar eclipses tend to be very relationship-oriented, but that doesn't necessarily mean relationships with other people. It can be our relationship with our work, our health, our bodies, our finances, or even our relationship with ourselves. Full moons and lunar eclipses tend to bring things to the surface that have been building for a while. And this can be emotional, and sometimes maybe there's a little drama that comes along with it. But whatever comes up usually isn't something completely new. It's something that's been brewing for a while. The eclipse simply shines a light on it and makes it harder to ignore. So this particular eclipse could feel like a major emotional turning point or a sense of closure around something that's been part of your life for a long time. And because nothing happening this year is basic or simple, this eclipse is amplified by so many other things happening, making the energy feel much bigger, deeper, and more transformational. So the first thing influencing it is a Mercury Cazimi happening on the same day as the eclipse. So when a planet is Cazimi, it's considered to be at the peak of its power. It's literally in the heart of the sun. So the energy of that planet becomes incredibly strong and focused. So we can expect some surprises, some breakthroughs, unexpected news, aha moments, or maybe just a completely different way of looking at something, like we finally get it. The next really cool thing is that this full moon is part of something astrologers call a magic triangle. And I just love that name. So it means that the 3 spiritual planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are all being activated by this Pisces full moon and lunar eclipse. So this is about spiritual awakening and evolution. It can feel that we've been on autopilot for a while, and then suddenly we wake up and see something different. Once again, we get it. And this doesn't necessarily mean something dramatic is going to happen. It can be very subtle. Like maybe you have a powerful dream. Maybe you suddenly realize you've outgrown a situation. Maybe you get a strong feeling that you're being called into a completely different direction. So pay attention to everything that comes up and trust your intuition. There's also something called a Boomerang Yod happening that adds even more change, more growth, and more awakening. It's created by the full moon at the midpoint of Neptune's sextile to Pluto. Neptune sextile Pluto is at its strongest placement in over 40 years, and this adds to our spiritual evolution. And there's one more piece of this eclipse that I think is really important. This is a lunar eclipse near the North Node. So the North Node is about where we're going. It represents growth, a new territory, and the direction we're being pulled toward. So when an eclipse activates the North Node, there can be a feeling that something is unfolding and we're moving towards something new. The North Node is pointing us forward. So after all the changes we've gone through the past year and a half, with all the planets changing signs and moving into these super powerful placements, this eclipse feels like the final exclamation point on all of that change. Not to say more isn't coming, but with this eclipse, we finally move forward into a new reality. So you may have heard in spiritual circles about this change from 3D to 5D. And that's basically a way of describing a shift in consciousness. 3D is the old way of operating, where we tend to live from fear, separation, competition, and the need to control things. 5D is about moving into a higher level of awareness where we're more connected and trusting and compassionate and guided by our intuition. It doesn't mean we literally leave the 3D world or go somewhere else. Like, we're still living here, living our everyday lives. It's about how we experience the world. We move from living in fear to love, from control to trust, from separation to connection. So when you hear people talking about the shift from 3D to 5D, think of it as waking up to a different way of being, of experiencing life. And that's where we are right now. And this shift isn't just happening within each of us. We're seeing it happening all around us too. So there's wisdom woven into this eclipse, almost like we've learned what we needed to learn from an old chapter, and now we're finally ready to move on from that story. And now we're starting a new story, one that's been coming for some time. We might not know exactly what it looks like yet, but we are definitely ready to start living it. So this week, expect some aha moments. Expect some crazy-ass surprises. If you feel exhausted or foggy, it's just the energy of this powerful eclipse. And we're almost done with all the huge changes. This is the exclamation point on everything we've gone through. And then we finally move forward. And I have to say that the timing of the Fall Women's Wisdom Circle on the art of being present is remarkable. The circle starts on Tuesday, just 2 days before the eclipse, like right as the energy shifts from figuring things out toward being present to what comes next. So if you've been thinking about joining a wisdom circle, this is the one. Like, everything in our lives is better when we're present. So if you want to deepen your spiritual connection, being present is the foundation. If you want messages from your spirit guides, you have to be quiet enough to hear them. You want to notice signs and synchronicities, you have to be paying attention. We can't notice what we aren't present for. And we just aren't present most of the time, like we're thinking about what happened yesterday, worrying about what might happen tomorrow, replaying conversations, or, trying to figure out what comes next. And it takes practice to be present. We practice other things in our lives like yoga, music, sports, a new language. But how often do we practice being present? Not very often. So the circle is every other Tuesday for 3 months, and we'll be using the book, The Power of Now, as our inspiration. It costs $300, and there's a link to learn more and register in the show notes or on my website, abundology.com. And as always, thank you for listening and passing the podcast on to a friend. This afternoon, my Summer of 62 hikes continues with a hike with my son, Tice. So have a great week, everyone, and I'll be back next week to talk about September's astrology and numerology.